Hey everybody, hope you're having a great holiday season. If you're listening to it right now, we just got done with Thanksgiving and we are headed into Christmas. So right now it's 2020. I hope you're having a great 2020, how crazy it's been. Some of us cannot wait till we put this year behind us and get ready for 2021, whatever that looks like. But I'm glad that you've joined me today on the Pound for Pound Leader podcast. I'm really excited because I have my very good friend who we've known each other for the last 7 years, and his name is Bishop Courtney McBath, and he pastors Calvary Revival Church in Norfolk, Virginia with his beautiful wife, Janine, for over 30 years. You know, he's a great author, speaker, executive coach, global pastor, but also completed his most recent book called 4C Leadership Lessons During the COVID Crisis. And now, not only is it relevant for today, but it's also relevant for after this and even forever. If you are a leader, if you're leading anybody, you've got a title or no title, it does not matter because every single one of us is leading. I think you're going to get so many great gems out of this podcast. It's the first time. I've never had him in our church. I hope so this spring that he joins us at an Inspire Church. But I love his passion for people. Amazing how he entered into the ministry when he was 13 years old. Man, when I was 13, I didn't even know what I was doing at 13. I was getting into a lot of trouble at 13. At 13, he preached his first sermon, everybody. And now he is one of the greatest pastors that I know. And I think you're absolutely going to love the podcast interview that I have with him. Would you please welcome my good friend, Bishop Courtney McBath from Revival Church in Norfolk, Virginia. Well, everybody, welcome to the Leader Lift, aka Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. It is my privilege and my honor to have with me on the podcast somebody I've been waiting for a long time. Because of the time differences, I was able to book him, everybody. It's not easy, but to get one of my great friends, Bishop Courtney McBath, all the way from Norfolk, Virginia. And everybody, I want you to welcome Bishop. Bishop, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I'm glad to be here, Mike. It's a real pleasure. And I'm grateful for you and the ministry that you guys have been really rocking and rolling now for years and touching so many people, not just there in the great state of Hawaii, but all around the world. And so I love and appreciate you guys. And thank you so much for your leadership and for your good example.
Oh, Bishop, you're a little bit further down the road from me. So I appreciate your kind words, and I love your journey. And, you know, if everybody's wondering, how do I meet Bishop Courtney McBath? I was you and I went to a golf tournament with John Bevere, and they paired us like skill. They put us together, and we were in the cart together for 18 holes, everybody. That's about 4.5 hours. And I had the best time with this man of God. And I just had the privilege of being in a space and to be in that cart. Had I known back then what I know now, I would have asked more questions. But Bishop, forgive my ignorance back then. But it's so good to have you.
Yeah, you know, that was an amazing time. My only regret for those 2 or 3 days is that we couldn't somehow fix that thing where we could play together every day. I was telling my wife, I said, I made a friend today. I said, I've made a friend for life today. I said, I love this guy. And I just went on and on. I got a chance to meet your wife and family. And boy, that was a great moment together. We have to create some more of those.
We have to. And I'm so grateful for the friendships that connect us, right? So if it weren't for Steve Kelly from Wave Church in Virginia Beach, I wouldn't have met you. Because I think Steve was the one that recommended to John Bevere that we play together. Yep. And then I find out a few years down the road that you are a great friend of Dr. Sam Chand, and so am I. And so how amazing is that?
Yeah, we have all these connections. And so it was obviously we were just meant to be. It was just a matter of us kind of arriving at our place of destination and connection.
Amen. So Bishop, I'd love to get some context. I know you wrote a great book called the 4Cs. You got that? Could you lift that up for me, please?
I there's a picture of it right there. It's 4C leadership. So I guess it's maybe reversed to other folks, but 4C leadership, lessons I learned during the COVID crisis. And I know we're going to talk about that in a little while. Yet it's kind of, this is an interesting book for me in my journey. I've been in ministry since I was 13 years old. And
wow.
Yeah, I turned 61 this week.
Well, you've been drinking from that fountain. Whatever you drinking, you got to bottle that, Bishop, and send it over here to Hawaii.
It's working, and I'm grateful for God kind of keeping me. And I've got 5 kids and 4 grands, and my oldest kids are almost 40 years old. So he's really been gracious to us. We've pastored the same church for 30 years. I've been married to the same woman for 40 years in May of this coming year. We've been married 40 years. And so God's really been amazingly gracious. Then we came here to Norfolk, Virginia at the age of 30. Okay. So I've been with the church. I'm in my 31st year, starting transition time to turn the church over to younger leaders. And I'm excited about that too. But my journey in Norfolk has been fun. I've been able to plant a church and plant some other churches and kind of become a global pastor to guys and ladies around the world. Has been a fun part of my journey, and now kind of easing into a life of consulting and leadership coaching. It's going to kind of be my next assignment, and I'm taking over the helm of a small Christian college as the president of college. So I'm really excited. I'm excited about where I've been, Mike, but I'm even more excited about what I'm entering into. Wow. I'm just thrilled about it. And so 4C leadership kind of happened as I started my transition from pastoring into the work of coaching, consulting, and leading a college.
That's incredible. That's a full plate. Going from leading a great church, one of the greatest churches in in Norfolk, and Virginia Beach. When I would imagine people from Virginia Beach are driving to your church. Yeah. And also you have a global footprint where you're shepherding and leading in 10 different countries. Am I right?
Yeah, on about 5 different continents. We're in China, we're in the Balkans, we're in South America, Central America, and all over Africa. And so it's been a kind of an amazing journey for us. Places that I only saw pictures of as a kid, and being able to actually have churches and pastors in those places has been pretty amazing.
So I'd love to hear about, we're going to hear about where you are today and where you're going to go in the future, but take us back a little bit on the original call of God in your life. You were 13 years old, serving in the ministry. Tell us how that 13-year-old became a senior pastor for 30 years. Talk to us about that. I'd love to hear that story.
8 years old, 8, probably going on 9. It was 1967. I was the first Black kid in the elementary school that I attended. My family was threatened that if they put me in the school, that they would retaliate against my family. Wow. My parents were relatively young at the time. Mom was 22, Dad was 25. And so they've got this 5-year-old kid that's going to school, first Black kid in the school. I went first grade. They immediately, the first day, put me in the slow class. No testing, no nothing. Assumed. Slow kid. And so it's the slow kid that would eventually graduate from MIT. But I went the slow.
How you like me now?
Exactly. I've never said that to them, but I felt it at times. So I went in the slow class, and I found out years later that my little 100-pound, 5'2", 22, 23-year-old mom kind of went and read the riot act to them when she found out. They had a real come to Jesus meeting. I didn't know that. She was so honorable. She never told me that she went, because she wanted me to respect the principal, respect the teachers. So she didn't even tell me about this. Wow. But she knew it was totally racist, but she never told me because she didn't want me to use that as a reason or an excuse or let that be an issue. So, but magically, I got moved from the slow class to the advanced class. Come on. I didn't know that Mom was behind that magic. And so by the end of the year, Mike, I was teaching. The teacher had me start teaching the kids how to read.
No way.
Because I was already reading and writing. Wow. I became the teacher's assistant. And so when kids were struggle, I would teach them, I would help them with their reading when she couldn't get to them. So it's an amazing redemptive thing about how God takes what can be rejected, and that's true for all of us.
Right. And
he turns it on its end and he uses it. So I get to the third grade. My third grade teacher is Mrs. Watkins. And by the way, Mike, I remember every teacher's name I ever had from first grade on. So Ms. Watkins said, Courtney, I think by the time you're an adult, our country will be ready for, as she said it, and it was appropriate then, a Negro president. Ms. Watkins had no idea how prophetic she was, because of course it did actually happen when I became an adult. So, but I told Ms. Watkins, I said, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate you feeling like that about me, but I have a higher calling. I'm supposed to be a preacher. Wow. So that was third grade, 8. I told her that I was 8 going on 9. Wow. And because I started school a little early, I started at 5. So of course, like all of the kids, I'd want to be a policeman, a fireman, and everything else you could think of for the next few years. But I got to 6th grade, 7th grade, I was in that pulpit, and I started preaching at 13. And as a freshman at MIT, 17-year-old, November the 2nd, 1977, I preached my first official message with my pastor, Bishop Gideon Thompson, who's the founder of Jubilee Church, the largest spirit-filled church in the city of Boston. And so we founded that together. And guys like Andy Thompson and Chris Hill and all those guys would come out of that church. And so that was me at 17. I stayed there in Boston from 17 to 25. I met Janine there. First 2 kids were born there. And then we moved back home to Tennessee, stayed there, connected with my pastor, now Bishop Richard Hilton. And so at Bishop's released me, sent me to Norfolk at when I was 29, almost 30, by about 30.
Why Norfolk, Bishop?
Interesting you ask. 27, 28 years old, I was flying. I was going to a small town in North Carolina. There have been times in my life that I had to fly into a city to get to another city. This is the first time I ever had to fly into a different state to get to a small town. Okay. So I was going to Ahoskie, North Carolina, but I had to fly into Norfolk, Virginia. I was about 28, I believe. When my plane landed in Norfolk, now all my life I've known I was supposed to pastor, but I never knew where. When my plane landed, the Holy Spirit said, "This is where I want you to pastor." Wow. And I thought, okay, where is this? So I get out of the plane. It says Norfolk International Airport. So when I got to my place where I was going to preach, I shared that with the pastor there. He said, "We've been praying that God would send somebody to Norfolk, Virginia." And so I went home. I asked my pastor. I asked my wife. And I'm thinking, Mike, somebody's going to talk me out of this. I'm an engineer with a good job, with a house. I'm 27 years old. I've just turned down a major promotion with Baxter Healthcare Corporation. Wow. And then suddenly I go into this place. And so once I get in, I'm in there. And so my wife and my pastor don't talk me out of it. They end up encouraging me to take this job. And so I take the job, and I decide to do it. And I decide I'm going to Norfolk, and I go to Norfolk, Virginia to start the church off of that.
So I love this. So you get out of the plane, you're in Norfolk, the Holy Spirit speaks to you. This is where you're going to pastor. You share it with the other pastor. 2 questions go into my mind. Number 1, did the other pastor, you said he'd been praying, did he get nervous? Because
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at
That's
all.
amazing.
He was one of those old-fashioned bishops, and he's way too old to be insecure about some 28-year-old pastor. So he was excited about. I was in Norfolk, was about an hour from his small town that I was preaching in. So his name was Val Melendez, and there'll probably be at least one person who will hear this who'll say, "I heard of that guy before." So Bishop Val Melendez, and you probably have heard of Bishop John Jimenez, Rock Church found in Virginia.
Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing.
So those two confirmed it. I went back home, and my pastor says, "Courtney, I think this is the Lord." He said, "But would you stay a year to help me to get leadership in a position for you to go?" I said, "Sir, I'll stay 5 years. So I'm in no hurry to go anywhere. You tell me what you want me to do. I'm here." He said, "No." He said, "I don't think you should stay more than a year, but if you'll do that." So I spent the next year helping Bishop Hilton put the leadership and everything together for our church, of about probably at that time a church of maybe 100, 150. That church has now grown into the thousands in a rural place like East Tennessee. It's crazy. So Janine and I, then we packed up and we moved to Norfolk with nothing, and except our clothes, some furniture, no money, 2 kids, one on the way. No, 3 kids, one on the way, and got to our place and didn't even know how we'd pay the rent. Had our first service. 21 people showed up. I was thrilled. I didn't know if anybody would come because nobody knows me. And so 21 people came, and it was off and running from there. That 21 became 75 in 3 months. That 75 became 300 in 9 months. That 300 became 2,000 people in 3 years. And that 2,000 over the last 30 years is, I don't know how many people now. It's a bunch of them. Sometimes they actually come to church. So so God just did something really amazing for us. And that's kind of been our journey, 30 years old, started by faith. And, you know how that goes. And God just kind of worked it out over the years.
That's incredible. So in the years that you've been pastoring, I think you've written about 2 to 3 other books. Tell us about those titles, and then let's talk about 4C and how you got to 4C.
Did a bunch of small books. Why You Need Jesus, Choose to Be a Man. Some small little mini books did as a young guy. And then the first major book with Charisma was a book on marriage called Maximize Your Marriage. And did that one. And then a few years later, 2008, I released a book with Simon and Schuster called Living at the Next Level.
Wow.
And so that book was that was a fun thing for me. I was probably still in my 40s, barely. Yeah, I was still 48 or so. I was young like you back then. So it was like I was 40. I was in my 40s, and that was fun. That book came out. And then I just stopped, and I didn't write anything, but I knew that I was being disobedient. I had all the excuses. There's so much going on. I'm finishing my doctorate, and I'm not, but God wasn't trying to hear any of that. So COVID hit, and I felt like the Lord said, write a leadership book and have it ready so that when people come out of this pandemic, there'll be some principles they can use. And I realized then that the principles that you learn in peacetime sometimes actually apply. But the principles you learn in wartime, they always apply. So that's why so many great presidents and leaders and prime ministers, were generals and people in wartime, because it literally forges leadership. And I felt that's what God was speaking to me about the crisis. Back then, Mike, when I first started writing 4C leadership, I thought the crisis, would be over in a couple of months.
That's what I was going to ask you. That's what I was going to ask you that. Okay, now keep going. I'm sorry.
So I said, I had to ask my publisher, I said, what would I have to do to get this book out by May? Because I'm thinking this thing's going to be over in May. I got to get cranking. He said, you'd have to write a chapter. He said, you'd have to write almost a chapter every 2 days. I said, I'm on. I said, put me on a schedule. I'm doing it. So I started writing. Boom. And the Lord just gave me these 4 simple things: context, communication, collaboration, contingency thinking. He said, these are lessons you had to apply. He said, if you'll position it properly, people can take these same lessons, and even when this crisis is over, they'll be able to make application where they are, and whether it's business or ministry, profit or nonprofit, these 4 C's will be helpful for them. And I said, well, Lord, if it will, I'll do it. And the book we had it written, published to the publisher by late June, on the street in August. I started writing it in April. It was on the street in August.
That's amazing.
It's crazy. He just kind of downloaded it to me. So it doesn't have the style and the prose that I kind of like. You know, I'm one of those Max Lucado lovers. So I like, I don't like books that sound like a sermon that somebody preached and then just kind of typed out the sermon. I like the book to have a little prose to it. So my Living at the Next Level has that. 4C is a little more like almost like an engineering document. It kind of just puts it out there for you. Not a lot of prose, but it's practical.
Yeah. No, I think that's the way people want that stuff right now. I think it's give it to me straight. Yeah. Finesse that. Say what you got to say, but please tell me what I need to know, because right now, I think the attention span of people of reading books, I notice mine. Like, I would read novels. I don't have time for a novel right now. I want a shorter book, but I want the meat right away. I want give me the bones and the skeleton, but I need that meat right away. And I'm excited.
Is it true for your preaching too? Have you noticed that since you've been online that you don't preach as long and you don't feel like people's attention span is as long?
Oh yeah, I am. I'm kicking up dust. I'm like I'm trying to capture their attention. I'm 20 minutes, 25 minutes max for the preaching. Even in-person services, I've shrunk that as well. I was talking to a friend the other day when I used to be a worship leader. My pastor discouraged me from being a worship leader in his own unique way. I said, remember when there was 30 minute worship on Friday nights? He was like, I remember that. That was a 6-song set. And I got called at the last minute. Hey, Mike, can you lead worship for me? I'm late. They're holding me overtime at work. I said, okay. So I threw together six worship song set in 15 minutes. I got done. My pastor calls me over. He goes, Mike, during the commercials, the announcements, he goes, don't take this the wrong way. I said, all right. Whenever somebody says, don't take this the wrong way, get ready.
It's going to be bad.
Yeah. He told me this. He goes, you're a lousy musician. I go, okay. He goes, but you're a greater preacher. I'm just saying, that is your call. That is. And, I spit out the bones. I took the meat, and he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. I'm glad I didn't get stuck being a worship leader. I mean, I love our worship leaders, but I'm doing what I'm doing.
But I'm not one of them.
Longer time, and now it's shorter and getting to the point a little bit quicker. I think people want that.
I think you're right, sir. I think so.
Bishop, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So when God starts to download this book to you, who is the person that you're thinking that I'm writing this to?
Well, that's a good question. So in my heart, I'm writing this to everybody who has any responsibility for leading or managing other people. So if a guy's a supervisor in a grocery store, or if he's a small group leader in a church, or if he's a corporate manager, a vice president, a CEO, I'm kind of seeing all these gals and guys who operate at these different levels wherever they, it's like John Maxwell says, leadership is influence, which makes even people who don't want to be leaders because everybody's got influence.
Right.
So that's kind of who I saw. And I felt like the book even came out that way. It's pastors can use it and easily manipulate it. And I say that in a positive way, right, for what they're doing. But it's just as easy for someone who's not I think, to use, and maybe easier because I don't do preaching in it. I'll make some scripture references because I want people to know that I am a Christian and that the principles I believe in come from scripture.
Yeah.
But it's not a preaching book. It's a nuts and bolts type of book. And I talk about things in here that I frankly have not heard very many Christian leaders actually discuss.
That's awesome. I think that this is a timely book. I think when we were together before, I prayed that this book could be not just a COVID season book, but an every season book. And I believe that with all of my heart, because as soon as Christmas is over, our staff is going to go through your book. And
oh, wow.
Because I think it's really, like I said, I really think it's timely. I think it's perfectly written for the times, but also for the times that this extended COVID pandemic season thing that's going on. I think this is in every season and a new season book as well. So I want to encourage everybody to go get it. We'll tell them how to get it at the end of this podcast. But Bishop, who's been your biggest influences on you as an author and as a pastor?
Probably. Wow, so I have a spiritual father and I have a pastor, two different men. One is white, one is black. One probably tends to lean more toward Democrat. The other tends to lean more toward Republican. Both of them would tell you they're independents, but it's probably the way they lean. They are both very biblically based and have both highly influenced me. My spiritual dad, who first released me to preach, is Bishop Gideon Thompson, who I referenced earlier, who's about 73, 74 years old now. And he has been in my life since he was 31. He became my pastor when I was 17. So he has been in I believe in long-term relationships. So he's still a part of my life 44 years later.
Wow.
And then as a 24-year-old, when I moved to Tennessee, I met my pastor, Bishop Richard Hilton, who was in Johnson City, Tennessee, who became my best friend. And so Richard and I have been together since, we're about 4 or 5 years apart in age. So we've been together since I was 24, 25. I'm 61 now. Wow. So he and I have been friends, and he's been my pastor for 36 years.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so, my wife has been my wife, just one gal for 40 years. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just leave it alone. And so those two have been the primary influence. And then behind them, John Maxwell, Sam Chan would probably be the next real influence on my life. They've been my leadership coaches. Dr. Maxwell started with me probably when I was, I don't know if I'd even turned 40 yet. I was close maybe to 40 when John and I first met. And then Sam came along when I was probably 42, 43. And so the two of them are still in my life. I still meet with them consistently and get feedback, correction, rebuke, whatever it takes. So I always said, Mike, the crazier you are, the more help you need.
Right.
So I have a lot of help. My wife would affirm that.
You've got great help around you. You've got John Maxwell and Sam Chan. You got great spiritual fathers. But John Maxwell, one of the greatest leadership, writers of all time and speakers. And even Sam, Dr. Sam Chan, who's, who you and I admire. I love John Maxwell, no doubt about it. I've had the privilege of spending a little bit of time with him. Last year, right before COVID, I was in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I was at a gathering where there were about 20 pastors that he brought together. I couldn't believe I was in the room. And then, of course, Sam, to be a good friend of Sam Chan, for me and for you, we know what that's like. What a connector.
He's a gift. He really, He really is. So we used to, we've always, I don't know if you remember John Hull, who used to work for John Maxwell. He was head of the equip for a while. And he used to say, man, if you know Sam Chan, do you even need to know Jesus if you know Sam Chan? Because Sam Chan knows everybody. He knows as many people as Jesus knows. But the beauty of Sam is that he's always connecting people.
Yep.
Always connecting.
Sam will send text messages, and what he'll do is he'll put two people in it, and he'll just say, just connecting good friends. Yep. And that's probably happened to me maybe about 7 times with Dr. Sam. You guys are amazing.
Yeah. And every time it happens for me, it's life changing. And
right.
And John's always been like that too. Everybody's ever connected me to, it just was a win, a huge win for me. And so those guys, those 4 have been very influential in my life. Of course, there are others who I could mention as well, but those 4 really have, and they've stuck with me, through all my ups and downs and ins and outs and failures and successes. They never gave up on me. Wow. And they've inspired me, Mike, to want to be a guy in people's lives that doesn't give up on them. That, when you got me, you got me. You got me when you're doing real good. And when you're not doing so good, you still got me, still a part. So those guys kind of taught me that kind of love. And I appreciate that too.
That's awesome. Bishop, your book, The 4 C's, you talk about context, you talk about collaboration, communication, contingency. Which one was actually the smoothest that you ended up writing? Which one of those 4 that you said, like, man, this came easier than I thought?
Probably collaboration.
Tell us why.
Because collab is my wheelhouse. I've always been a guy that I don't really need to be the guy. I just want to be with the people that are getting it done. So one of the things that the pandemic is teaching me is that one collaborative decision can undo 1,000 deficits in one collaborative decision, because we all hit deficits, things that we don't have enough for: personnel, money, juice, influence. But when we connect with somebody else, then that one collaborative decision can undo all of those deficits. In trying to feed people in our state, in our region, I just didn't have the juice to do what I felt like needed to be done. There were hundreds of thousands of seniors who did not need to be in grocery stores and didn't need to be in restaurants, but they needed to eat.
Right.
And I couldn't figure out a way that I could have enough meals on wheels to do it. But with me and an Episcopal church and a Roman Catholic church and a Baptist church and Mercy Chefs and the Southeastern Food Bank of Hampton Roads and the Eastern, with those collaborations, we had more than enough money, food, cars, people to feed every senior that asked us for food. One collaborative decision. And the church can be the worst at collaboration and connecting with other people to do great things. And this pandemic, I think, is teaching us that there's some real value in connecting with other people.
That's incredible. Collaboration. I love how you put that it can overcome 1,000 deficits. One collaborative decision, bringing people together, like that wheelhouse. So actually, I see that picture, that wheelhouse, and that wheel actually makes the other ones turn as well, and they work together.
Yep, absolutely.
That's incredible.
So that one came smooth because it's kind of me. And
which one would have been the harder one to come through?
Ooh, that's easy. The hardest one, and I'll tell you why if you want me to, but the hardest one was contingency thinking.
Okay.
Now,
tell us why.
Even as an engineer, but I'm a saved, spirit-filled man of faith engineer. So contingency thinking forced me to question, okay, by having a contingency plan, is that a lack of faith? And so the Lord said, well, does having a life insurance policy make you a man who has no faith?
No.
Absolutely not. It just makes me a man who has enough faith to accept what is reality. And that is, I am probably going to die unless Jesus comes back, before I go. But if he doesn't, I'm leaving. If he doesn't come to get me, I'm going to see him. So having a life insurance policy is an act of faith that says, your word says it's appointed unto man wants to die. After that, the judgment. I believe what your word says. And so I need to be prepared to take care of my family. So therefore, I have a contingency plan. If I don't live forever, my plan is to make sure that my family is still taken care of. So what I've discovered that oftentimes with both, not just ministries, but in business as well, people don't have a contingency plan for what if it doesn't happen the way you planned for it to happen.
Right.
So if somebody questions me biblically, I simply say many are the plans in a man's heart, but the purpose of the Lord prevails. So why do I have many plans? Because I don't always know exactly which one is the purpose of the Lord. I hope I do. Sometimes I'm right. Sometimes I'm wrong. So contingency says, hey, I'm expecting 500 people to get saved in our church this year. Do I have a plan if 3,000 people, if we get Acts 3 and 3,000 show up? Am I even ready for that? So contingency thinking pulled me in a bunch of different directions. But at the end of the day, it helped me understand that sometimes I don't plan for enough success. And so I'm not ready for what could happen. And I need a contingency plan for what if he does exceedingly and abundantly above all I can ask or think.
Amen. Yeah. No, I love it too, because sometimes with faith, we think if I have a plan B, if plan A fails, there's something wrong with my thinking, and I need to burn my ships and or burn my boats, and that shows that I have a lack of faith. Doesn't actually it's great planning. Actually, having an exit strategy from something that you've tried to make work, it's not working. We're going to have to cut our losses and do something different. Rather than react to that, have that plan. I have a plan for that. Here's another folder. I have a plan for that. I have a plan for this success. I have a plan if that fails. If that guy leaves, if that staff member needs to move forward and we need to move on, I have a plan for that. I think it's always great to have a contingency plan. I like that. I like that contingency.
Contingency thinking. It's and you know what, Mike? You and I know guys and gals who don't have a will, who don't have a succession plan.
Yeah.
This is not faith. That's disobedience.
Yeah.
so they're not ready for, it's like Vanderbloemen says in his book Next about succession, every pastor is an interim pastor.
Yeah, I'm the interim pastor of Inspire for the last 19 years, but I'm just interim. I get it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I'm pastor of CRC for 30 years, but I'm still an interim. I'm not the permanent pastor. And the sooner people recognize that, I think the more they can walk by faith. Yeah. I had both. Did I ever tell you that I had both hips replaced? I may have told you when we played golf that day.
Oh.
Yeah. So I've since I've seen you, I had both shoulders.
We got two hips.
I'm totally bionic at this point. So I've had both hips replaced and both shoulders replaced.
Wow.
They're all metal for us. So people ask me, do I set off the detectors in the airport? I say yes, from the parking lot. So when I had the hip surgery at my first one at 37 years old, I realized that it took more faith for me to trust God for that surgery than it did for me to keep hurting, saying I was trusting God for healing. It took more faith for me to trust God and have surgery.
Right.
Because that's what scared me most, because I'd never been in the hospital before. So my point is, even with contingency thinking, sometimes we have it backwards. We think that if you're going to have faith, that means you don't have any other plans, you have any other way. Oftentimes faith says, trust God that it's going to work even if your way doesn't work. He's got a way that's going to work.
Amen. Amen. So tell me, how's your golf swing with those new hips?
Golf swing is great. You know, the hips I've had, one of them I've had for like 23 years, you know, but the shoulders are only 2-3 years old. And so I'm loving it, you know. Of course, now, if I hit a good shot, now my golf buddies say, yeah, got all that metal, of course. It can't be that I actually am good. It's the titanium, you know, that's doing it. So I'm actually doing great. I feel good. And played this week a couple of times.
Well, that's awesome. Bishop, where can they get their hands on that book on forcing?
Mike, the book, they've got choices.
Okay.
If they just want to spend money, they can go to Amazon. But if they don't want to spend money, they can go to CourtneyMcBath.com and I'll send them a free one.
Come on.
They just pay for shipping and handling. The beauty of going to CourtneyMcBath.com is not only do you get the book for free, but if you want to step up and take the masterclass and get the videos and the study manual, you can pay a little money for those. Right. So, you know, but if all you want is the book, you just go in there and say you want the book and we'll send you the book for absolutely free. And you can also, while you're there, you can jump on a mailing list. I'll send out some leadership teaching every week. That's all free, just to bless people. And I do that every week. And so they can get all that stuff too if they're interested. But the book is on Amazon for a cost, but it's free from me at CourtneyMcBath.com. You go there and we'll hook you up. We'll send it to you. It just depends on where we got to send it to. Now, if you're international and you're listening to us, because when I say it's free, I mean it. So if you're somewhere where it would be an inordinate cost to ship you the book, I will send you the download of the book to the country that you live in so that you still get the book for free.
Yeah, that's awesome. Download that book. Make sure you guys go to CourtneyMcBath.com. Probably so much more material that you're going to get than the book, because if you get the book, then you start getting more emails and you get opportunities to be shepherded and led by this great man of God. Listen to his insights, the way that he thinks from an engineer, pastor, spirit-filled. What a combination. And I think you're going to get so much out of him. If you're listening to Courtney McBath for the first time, everybody, I just want to tell you, if you can podcast him. Do you have podcasts that you do?
I have, we have everything. We've got an ongoing YouTube. We do our podcast differently. They're on CourtneyMcBath.com. Every Wednesday, we do a Next Level Leaders live on Facebook, live on Instagram under Courtney McBath.
That's awesome.
But those also get reproduced and played again on CourtneyMcBath.com. So if you've missed them, you can go to CourtneyMcBath.com and get we did some stuff on mission and vision, which I thought was pretty cool. And I think folks would love that. That's at CourtneyMcBath.com. So there's a bunch of material and content there that you can kind of get into and look for our other books as well.
Make sure you guys go there. You're going to a wealth of information, and make sure that you just download all that stuff, because you're gonna be feeding there for a while. And I think he's one of the great authors and speakers of our time. I can't wait to connect with him. I can't wait for him to be in Hawaii in 2021, so we can go play some golf. And more than that, I just want your friendship. I want to listen to you. I want to learn and glean from you. But I also want our people to be exposed to you. And I know our people would love you so much, Bishop.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it, Mike. And by the time I get there, I'll have another book coming out in January. So I told you that years ago, I wrote a book called Living at the Next Level. Well, this year I took that book and I wrote a leader's version of Living at the Next Level. And so next year, January, we'll release the leaders version of Living at the Next Level. It's going to be a cool book. And we've got a big summit that'll be happening in January, and it's all free. And folk can come to the summit, and we'll tell them about how they can get that book. But they get 4C first. That'll kind of set them up for this next deal, and it'll be fun stuff. So 2021, trusting the Lord is going to be an amazing year for you guys, for Inspire, that the Lord's going to really bless you guys and use you like never before. I mean, he's already doing some amazing things through you all. And Mike, I just want to tell you that there are guys like me around the world that just really admire what God has done through you and is doing through you. And one of the reasons we do is because there are a lot of gifted sisters and brothers out there, and we applaud them, love them, appreciate them. But I think for us with you, it's the humility, it's the I'm not all that you personify, and it's so refreshing in this day that we live in to turn on a guy and listen to somebody who just in a hey, I'm just Mike way just kind of speaks directly to your heart, gives you some good tools for leadership, and helps you really get on your leadership journey and grow is a blessing. So I wanted an opportunity to just say it publicly, what I say a lot about you privately, brother, is that in my books you are one of the absolute best. And I feel very honored to be connected to you.
Wow. You're making me tear up, Bish. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you.
I've always felt that way since the first time we met, brother. And I don't know, I may have left that sandwich in your bag on purpose just to make sure you had to talk to me at least one more time to get me my wedge home. Remember how Joseph put that silver cup in Benjamin's sack? You know, I'm gonna make you guys come back.
I was thinking more on the lines of Rachel putting the household gods under the camel, you know.
That too. Do what we got to do to stay connected, brother. So I'm grateful, and thanks for this. This has been great. Anytime I can serve you, hey, just let me know.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Everybody, you've been listening to Bishop Courtney McBath, incredible author, speaker, and pastor, and also life coach and executive coach. Make sure you go to CourtneyMcBath.com. Get everything that you need for life and ministry. God bless you, everybody. And until then, thank you for listening to the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. Aloha.
Wow, such a great interview. I hope you were inspired by the life and lessons learned in this interview with Bishop Courtney McBath. You know, I want you to stay tuned because we will be having another Pound for Pound online summit happening in Asia coming up in January, and it is going to be great. A totally different lineup of pastors and speakers. It's going to be incredible. You know, you can also keep up to date by following me on Instagram at Mike Kai, and you can also visit the website mikekai.tv for updates and resources. Also on the site, be sure to pick up my book, The Pound for Pound Principle. In fact, buy it for some friends during Christmas. This, I promise you, this is the gift that keeps on giving. We also have the new Masterclass digital course. The Masterclass includes 16 video sessions of new content that you can go through on your own or with your teams to take your leadership to the next level and for the new year ahead. Again, thank you for joining me on the Pound for Pound Leader Podcast. We'll see you next time. Until then, aloha.